Good morning. Well, we have a very full and exciting day, and we want to get going now. We first want to thank you so much for coming to this New Hampshire Women's Caucus at Colby Sawyer. I'm Susan Wright, and I'm honored to be a member of the Colby Sawyer Board of Trustees. And this morning's breakfast, I would want to begin by recognizing a couple of our sponsors. And I believe that President Morris Edwards from the Adventures in Learning is here. Would he please stand? Thank you. And then everything is about nourishment. Later, our break will be sponsored again. We have the Ledyard Bank, and would Karen Zurheide stand up, please? Oh, great, Karen. Thank you. Well, let's begin. To open our caucus, Annie McLean Kuster will give her reflections. And I would not need to read what's already in your program about Annie, but I would point out that in New Hampshire, she is certainly known to many, if not all, for her incredible career. She's devoted herself to the children and the families of New Hampshire on so many issues, public policy issues, her interest in health care and education. She has done so much to advance the agenda for all people in New Hampshire. She is an attorney by training and practice, and we have described her in the program as a public policy advocate and community activist, and she's currently a candidate for Congress. Annie has been a longtime friend, particularly of my husband's and myself. We're so pleased that Annie and Brad Kuster and their two sons, Zach and Travis, are in New Hampshire living in Hopkinton. Thank you, Annie.
Thank you. Well, good morning and welcome to the 2012 Women's Caucus. This is very, very exciting. And it's fitting that we come together today in this place because this marks the 195th birthday of Elizabeth Cady Stanton, an early leader of the women's rights and suffrage movement and president of the National American Women's Suffrage Association for 20 years. It's also fitting that we come together just 2 months out before the 2012 presidential primary here in New Hampshire. And of course, it's fitting that we're here on the campus of Colby Sawyer College, which back in our day, Cotton and I will say, was an all-women's college. I went to an all-men's college up the road. After 200 years of all men, I was in the 3rd class of women at Dartmouth. And so I'm used to the notion of women as change agents. And I welcome the men who are with us today, and together we will create change on important issues of the day: women's health, women's economic well-being, and issues impacting women around the globe. I want to tell just a quick story about my family history of women change agents. My great-grandmother, Susan Bancroft, was a suffragette here in New Hampshire and fought for the women's right to vote. My grandmother worked very hard for children in need in Manchester and the mills, children in poverty around the state. She used to go out with a station wagon and food and clothing, travel around. My grandparents were founders of Child and Family Services of New Hampshire, which is now our largest statewide social service agency. And then my mother ran for Congress in 1980, back before mothers did that kind of thing. And she came at the invitation of Hillary Cleveland to Colby Sawyer campus to give the commencement address. And she quoted from her father, Dean Neidlinger, who had been the dean of Dartmouth College. He had given a commencement address back in the day at Colby Sawyer. And so I want to share with you, the title of his commencement address was, to these young women, "Be the wind, but not the sail." And he proceeded to tell this entire story about how their husbands were going to go off to be titans of industry and leaders across this country, and that the women should not get in the way of his progress, that they should propel him. So my mother gave a wonderful speech, "Be the sail." And so I'm here in 2011 to say, "Be the ship." The other thing I want to talk about women as change agents is what a critical time in our country this is for families, communities, our nation, and our globe. Women need to step up now more than ever, and it's not always easy. We are up against it in some ways. And let me just share with you some facts that I think will probably surprise you. Particularly living here in New Hampshire, where we have lots of wonderful women in public office. You'll hear later from Liz Hager and Risha McMahon. Obviously, Senator Jean Shaheen has been governor and senator. Carol Shea Porter has served in the Congress from New Hampshire. But did you know that the United States Congress is only 17% women? So think about that in the context of all the change that's happened in our collective lifetimes. Half the women coming out of law school, half of the students coming out of law school are women, half the students coming out of medical school, and it goes on and on. There are very few fields that women haven't made substantial progress. But there are two institutions, the United States Congress and Wall Street, where women have not made progress, and frankly, they're killing us. So that's part of why I'm running for Congress. I think that women do bring a very special sensibility to these issues. We're mothers, we're daughters, we're sisters, we're friends. We've held our babies and our dying parents. We've had experiences in life that are important to our public policy. And so for me, I know that our collective voice needs to be heard in Washington and needs to be heard on the issues of the day, getting our country back to work. Yes, we need to balance our budgets. Let's start by ending these two wars, bringing our troops home, and we can make responsible cuts. Redundant weapon systems that our own Pentagon says we don't need. But I will say this, as a mother, as a daughter, as a wife and a friend, I will not go to Washington to balance the budget on the backs of the old, the sick, and the poor. And I think you'll hear more today about Social Security, economic insecurity, equality in wages. Women are bearing the brunt of this downturn in the economy, and women are going to need to have a voice to bring us out and get us back to prosperity. So I want to end by just sharing with you a different piece of this, and that is that it's about values. And I hope today will engender a discussion about the values that we all share, that are American values, that are values here in New Hampshire. We're frugal people, but we're very compassionate people. We care about liberty, we care about equality, we care about justice. And on many, many, many fronts across this country, in the State House in Concord, in the Congress in Washington, and in state houses all across this country, there is an important debate going on about the values that will lead us and our children and our grandchildren into the next century. And that debate right now in Washington is framed as dismantling the EPA, dismantling the Department of Education, dismantling compassionate government and Medicare and Social Security. And an issue that's near and dear to my heart as an adoption attorney for 25 years taking away the rights for a woman for her own body, for her own private, personal decision-making. To me, one of the rights we hold dear here in New Hampshire is privacy, less government interference in people's personal lives. But votes are being taken every week now in Washington that are saying the government will interfere in those private decisions. So this is a very important time for all of us to come together. I'm grateful to you for your scholarship. I'm grateful to you for your engagement. And there's never been a more important time in our country for women to step up and face the challenges and bring solutions to the table. So thanks very much.
Annie, thank you so much. That was wonderful. I'm Cotton Cleveland, the moderator of the panel on women and the economy, and I think Annie has very successfully teed up economic issues as something near and dear and very important to women. We have three wonderful panelists today, and we're going to start first with Carol Folt, who's the provost of Dartmouth College, talking about the importance of childcare, empowering women in the workforce. Carol?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. The issue I'm highlighting for the caucus today is the critical need for affordable, safe, and nurturing childcare to ensure that women can both enter and advance in the state and national workforce. I'd like to begin by thanking Janet Bliss and her caregivers here at Colby Sawyer for making the daycare facility available to everyone today at no cost. These types of decisions make a big difference. A shortage of affordable, high-quality health care options in New Hampshire and our nation is affecting just about every working family with young children. Most public attention has focused, quite appropriately so, on the precarious position of low-income families and the increasing number of single mothers and who are their family's sole income earners. Access to affordable, reliable child care for many women will mean the difference for them between poverty and a decent standard of living, between being in the paid workforce or being on welfare. Today, I want to also expand the conversation to include women whose childbearing years come just at the time when they're also advancing in their careers, as they're poised to go into positions of authority, management, and leadership. The lack of affordable, reliable, high-quality health care for this group of women and parents also restricts their advancement, the economic future of them and of their families, and their contributions to the future of our state and our country. So my proposition is that New Hampshire and our country need to support a child care system that enables all women, in fact, of course, all parents, to be active and productive in the workforce as they want, and it makes it possible for them to advance and contribute to the fullest of their potential and their desires, indeed to be the ship. In short, a modern, affordable, effective system of child care is critical for their economic welfare, the future of our state, our citizens, and our children. As a scientist and now a university provost, I've always cared very deeply about increasing opportunities for women, and so I'm pretty familiar with a lot of these trends. One of the issues in our nation is that we have too few women entering many high-impact fields. So, for example, in science and engineering and other technologically intensive careers, women make up a disproportionate minority. In spite of gains in the numbers of women graduating in these fields, a lower fraction of women graduates pursue advanced degrees and embark on careers in these fields. For example, in 2009, there were only 2 department heads among the country's top 50 programs of chemistry, and among the top 50 engineering and physics programs, the number was 0. So women on the faculty in the sciences, for example, generally are clustered overwhelmingly at the junior level, and of course that's a time when childcare is particularly important. The interesting thing about this discussion is that discrimination, cultural bias, lack of opportunities don't appear to be as important in discouraging women as they were when I first became a scientist. Instead, recent studies are saying that the low representation of women is caused primarily by their choices related to child rearing and family. Women say they're opting out of pursuing leadership jobs because of intense demands, lack of flexibility and family-friendly policies, and significantly low access to good, affordable childcare. And what's true in the sciences, of course, is true in the industry, where women hold a small fraction of top management jobs, positions on governing boards. The trend is mirrored in the corporate world. In 2011, for example, only 12 Fortune 500 company CEOs and just about 12 to 13% of American corporation board members were women. The lack of women in leadership roles isn't a problem just for individual career-minded women. Our society is losing out on the talent, the skills, the intelligence, the creativity of a very significant fraction of a motivated part of our workforce. So how much of this is driven by the high cost of childcare? In 2005, a study of American women who left the workforce to have children found that about 93% wanted to return to work. Only about 40% returned full-time. More than half of them cited high costs of childcare as part of their decision. Of course, not everyone wants to return to work, and that's fine. But many experts are saying it is high cost, and the lack of good quality health care is a key factor for them. In the United States, about 90% of the child care cost is assumed by the parents. And the few programs that provide federal or state aid are, of course, targeted at needy families, or some care is provided by employers to their employees as a benefit. The cost of center-based child care varies greatly. So in New Hampshire, for example, it averaged just under $11,000 a year for infants, just under about $9,000 for 4-year-olds. Both are about at the middle of the range for all the states. The percent of a mother's income that child care represents is about 12% for married mothers, but it's about 37% for single mothers in New Hampshire. And high-quality health care is expensive. Many places struggle. Despite good intentions, they can't attract and retain qualified caregivers or support high-quality programs. There are 2,500 child care workers in New Hampshire. They make an average annual salary of just about $20,000 a year. Fortunately, there are some good ideas out there about possible solutions, and you'll hear more today. For example, we know we need to increase access to quality health care centers, preschool, full-day kindergarten, and after-school programs. But we also can think and support relevant laws and changes in public policy that can affect things like the terms of maternity leaves, parent leave, and the length of the school year. We can also draw on models from other countries where priorities about social and family welfare are very different. So in Norway, for example, a New York Times article just said this last summer, the cost of full-time toddler daycare is capped, you'll love this, at the equivalent of about 2 Big Macs a day, thanks to state subsidies. A high number of women there remain productively employed. About 75% of all women work outside the home and are considered to be important members of that society, contribute taxes, and so on. The health of Norway's children, which along with Sweden, Denmark, and Finland, consistently ranks among the highest internationally, well above that in the United States. The United States spends a significantly lower part of our GDP on family benefits than those countries. Norway, for example, spends about 3%. We spend about 1%. In this time of economic upheaval and fractious politics, of course, family-friendly policies, gender-related decisions haven't been a part of our key national conversation, but of course they should be. In the absence of government subsidies or policies, many businesses do, of course, step in. Of the top 100 U.S. companies who have been rated as good places to work, according to Fortune magazine, about 28 offer subsidized on-site daycare as a benefit to their employees. One of those, for example, Aflac, charges just under $500 a month for the service, which is about half the average cost of daycare in New Hampshire. Closer to home, Dartmouth runs its own childcare facility on site with a very enriching environment. They have highly trained staff. They have a sliding scale for tuition based on employees' income. Certainly, I wouldn't be here as a professor of biology or the provost if I hadn't been able to take full advantage of that wonderful health care. But even there, a woman making between $40,000 and $50,000 a year pays close to $900 a month for the care of a 2-year-old toddler, which is nearly a quarter of her paycheck. In some places, and this gives me more hope than any other example, there are innovative individuals and organizations building new models. And one I want to mention in New Hampshire is a collaboration of 10 Seacoast area child care providers who are working together to share their resources, and they're gaining national recognition. They're showing that it's quite possible to use combined purchasing power to deliver high-quality child care at a significantly lower cost. So in closing, my argument's simple. Developing high-quality, state-supported early childhood care and education is essential to create a brighter future for our state, for the women, girls, and families. Investing in these programs with better management and active political involvement will pay off. These positive changes will result immediately in benefits to individuals, family, and the state. And over a very shorter but longer time frame, we would see the benefits accelerate even further as more women are able to enter and indeed progress to the highest levels in New Hampshire and the state, bringing their strength, their capacity, and their productivity. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. So I hope what you're doing at your tables is beginning to write down questions, because each of the panelists is going to speak for a little bit less than 10 minutes, and then we will have some time for questions and answers. I'm delighted to now introduce Monica Zulaur, who's the Executive Director of the New Hampshire Women's Youth.
YWCA.
YW. No, never mind. It's YWCA from now on. 21st Century Workplace, Equal and Flexible.
Good morning. Let me start out with a quick question. How many of the audience members here go shopping occasionally? Hands? Does anyone gravitate towards a sale rack that perhaps says 20% off? Okay. Now I want you to remember the 20% off sticker, and the next time you open your paycheck, I want you to imagine that it has a 20% off sticker, because that's where women are right now. We are now making 80 cents on the dollar compared to what men earn. In 1979, that was 62 cents on the dollar. So we've made some headway, but I don't think I need to belabor the point on what it means to be making 20% less than men. So unless, and people can ask questions about that later, but I'm just going to sort of leave that, because I think we all like to receive equal pay, and I don't think I need to belabor that. So you're going to start hearing emerging themes. I'm only the third person to talk, and as Annie was talking, I was like, did she look at my notes? Women are making tremendous headway. If you look at the degrees being earned, workforces being entered into, the places that women continue to lack are economic and political power. And I don't believe we're going to have one without the other. Until women start earning what men earn and achieving those higher salaries, I don't think we're going to get the political power that we also need. But then again, until we get some of that political power, I don't think we're going to get the economic power. So it really has to go hand in hand, and voting by gender does matter. So what do we need to have work? For most of us, unless you're inheriting money, work is where you're going to get your economic power and stability. So we're going to need work that fits with being women. As of now, and again, I'm not going to give you a lot of data because it just sort of fogs the issue a little bit, but 80% of women who are married or partner are now dual income earners. And that income is now representing 50% of the household income. So the model of fewer women working fewer hours, money that was used to go on vacation, money that was used for the family extras is no longer the case. The money women earn is used for the family to sustain itself. 77% of mothers with children between the ages of 6 and 17 now work outside the home. 67% of mothers with children less than 6. So then we have to look at what's happening for childcare for these moms. The word is clear the workplace is changing. We currently have 4 generations in the workplace. We're soon to have 5 generations in the workplace. That is unprecedented ever in the history of time. That's going to have some real impact on how we work, how we view work. The group that is now pushing, interestingly enough, for a lot of flexibility in the workplace are baby boomers. Due to the current economy and just due to the fact that we're living so much longer, people are not often thinking of retiring at 55, 60, 65, yet they may not want to continue working 40 or 50 hours a week. There's also a lot of knowledge that they bring to the workplace. So employers are starting to look at how to retain these senior workers. How do you have flexibility? So again, when we talk about flexibility, and the YWCA has been working around this issue for the last 3 years here in New Hampshire. A lot of places think it's when you can take your lunch, or you know, can you come in a half hour later? It's really how we work, when we work, and where we work. And it goes by the day, by the year, and throughout your career. It's tragic that a woman can get a medical degree, want to leave the workforce for a while, and then have a hard time breaking back in. We should have flexibility to come in and out of the workforce, to work reduced hours, to work flex time, really flex time. And until we have childcare and school systems that reflect how we work and how we need to work, that's going to be increasingly more difficult. One of the things that I think is going to change this, however, is men, for the first time in studies, and if people want to see me after, I have all the information on where these studies are from, but men for the first time are now starting to report that they're feeling stressed over work and family. For years, women have felt stressed. Women have had to run out and pick the child up at daycare. Women have needed to take a day off because the child is sick. Men want to spend more time with their children, and they want to spend more time doing recreational activities, and that may mean needing to work less. I think when men start feeling the discomfort of those kind of balance issues, then we start to see changes. Let me just click. Without economic security, women will not have the ability to live safely in our culture. I mean, if you think about it, and you'll be hearing throughout the day about domestic violence and Social Security, too many of our things are based on what we have for money or what our employer provides for us. So part-time workers generally in our country, the majority are still women, do not have health insurance, do not have paid time off. That has a huge impact on your housing security and your safety. The reason I say safety is that women have to make a choice sometimes about staying in an abusive relationship, or do they have the economic means to leave that relationship? The economy pushes lots of choices that women make. So in wrapping up, I want you to think throughout the day how many things that you're going to hear about are going to tie back to our work life and our career choices. That's it for me. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Monica. I'd like to also talk to our panelists. We're very excited to have Sarah Chaisson Warner, Executive Director, New Hampshire Citizens Alliance.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I'm here to talk about women and Social Security. I imagine that living in the Granite State, we've had a lot of presidential candidates coming through our state over the last couple of months. We've all heard a lot about Social Security, and I'm here to ask us as women, as Granite Staters, and as a nation to commit to protecting Social Security and strengthening it rather than cutting it. I thought what would be helpful to start with first is just some program information, because there's a lot of questions about Social Security and some misinformation, and so I thought we'd start with just a little information about that. Social Security was created in 1935 by the Social Security Act during the Great Depression. And the way the program works is that it's based on contributions that workers make into the system. And the previous, the next generation is paying for the retirees of today's generation. While you're employed, you pay into Social Security through FICA taxes. You've probably all seen that on your paychecks. There's a little line item that says FICA, and you receive benefits when you retire. But retirees aren't the only ones that benefit from Social Security. Disability and survivor benefits are also included in the program, so Social Security also acts as an insurance if you become disabled, and also provides children under the ages of 18 or 19, it depends on the specific piece of it, with your benefits should a parent die. And to qualify for Social Security, you have to earn 40 credits before you retire. And so a credit is, you can earn up to 4 per year, and you get a credit for every $1,120 that you earn. And so this changes every year based on inflation and the way that the economy is going. So if you do some quick math, you have to work for 10 years and earn 4 credits per year. That's the easiest way to do it, or you can term it out 20 years, 2 credits per year. And the trust is actually projected to pay out benefits through 2041. And whenever I say that, I usually get this look. Are you sure? Because we've heard a lot about Social Security, and there's been a lot of misinformation about it, but it actually is projected to pay out benefits through 2041, and that's from the Social Security Administration, and that after that, it's projected to pay out between 75% and 78% of benefits. And also important to know is that by law, Social Security cannot add a dime to the deficit. So there's a lot of conversation about cutting Social Security to save our deficit. And I know all of us care about the deficit. All of us do. But talking about a program that by law cannot add to the deficit doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense. So how does Social Security affect women? Women make up 57% of Social Security beneficiaries ages 65 and up. And that shouldn't be much of a surprise to us. Women tend to live longer. It also makes up the majority of older women's income. So in the Granite State, women earn about $12,000 a year from Social Security. So break that down, it's about $1,000 a month. In 1999, 23% of women relied entirely on Social Security for their income. That rose to 29% in 2009, and it's still on the rise. This is a huge issue for women. And then also studies have shown that Social Security is especially vital to communities of color. So right now, about 1/5 of African American children receive survivor benefits, and women of color are more likely, according to studies, to become disabled on the job than white women are. So this is a really important issue for all women in the United States. So we've talked a little bit about the program, talked a little bit about why does this impact women so much, and there are some threats to Social Security right now, and I'm sure many of you have heard some of them in the news. The top 3 that I'd like to outline are raising the retirement age, cutting benefits, and privatization. Many different elected leaders, candidates at various different levels have brought up some of these suggestions. And I'm here to say that I don't think we need to do any of those. I think that there are solutions that are well within our grasp that we can use to strengthen Social Security and make it available at full benefit for you and me and our children and our children's children. And some of the ways that we can do that is first by, let's address our most urgent need, jobs, J-O-B-S, jobs. We are in a jobs crisis. It's pretty simple that more jobs means more money into the Social Security system. So let's look at some of the root causes here. More jobs, we need more jobs. And again, since Social Security can't add to the deficit, let's take that out of the conversation around reducing the deficit. Let's stop muddying the waters. Let's talk about what's real here. And the third thing that I have to suggest is that we strengthen Social Security's long-term funding sources. So right now, there is a cap on a taxable wage limit. So right now, you pay Social Security taxes on the first $106,800 that you earn. After that, you do not pay Social Security taxes. So if I make $150,000, which I don't, I just want to put that out there, I do not. Work for a nonprofit here. And Monica makes $75,000. She is paying Social Security taxes on her entire income, while I am not. If we eliminated the cap on taxable income, Social Security would be solvent. There are also a couple of other options that are out there. We could roll back the 2001 and 2003 tax breaks for the wealthiest 2%, which over 10 years have cost close to $1 trillion. If we rolled that back and dedicated that revenue to Social Security, we could also make it solvent. There's also some conversations floating around there, and I'm not sure how many folks have heard of this one, but it's called the financial transaction surcharge. And in plain terms, it's a small tax levied on every Wall Street transaction that's happened. So there are some people out there who say, look, Wall Street had a hand in wrecking our economy. Let's ask Wall Street to help us out a little bit in building back the economy as well. So those are some of the 3 financial options that are out there as well. But regardless of what it is that you think of these financial options, let's think about how do we strengthen this program. This is a program that is a mainstay for women, not only in this room, not only in New London, not only in New Hampshire, but across the country. And cutting this program is going to hurt women significantly. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Sarah. I'm standing so I'll be able to make sure to see hands. And when I call on you, if you could just mention your name, and also if you have a specific panelist to address, please say that, or if it's a general question that you'd like to hear from all of the panelists. So I know you've been thinking and sparked, and is that Jane? No, over there. Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Jackie Silly. Hi, Sarah. Thank you for that.
You want a mic?
I don't usually need one, but I'll take one. Years of teaching 140 students in a room, my voice usually amplifies. Sarah, one of the things that I've noticed about the attacks on Social Security is that somebody can take a thread of the truth and weave it into a very different narrative. So back some time ago, under the last administration, where there were attempts to privatize Social Security, I remember hearing this line: there are worthless notes in the Social Security drawer. So I believe that Social Security has been rated to balance the general fund for years and years and years. Those worthless notes, I believe, are treasury bonds. I think that was what was being referred to, and I think that's the connection to the deficit, because of course treasury bonds have to be paid back. So how do we push back, given that there is that threat of honesty? I mean, now it's let's walk away from the debt that we've incurred because we've been raiding that fund for 3 or 4 decades. How do we push back on that?
Sure. So right now, treasury bonds are the safest investment in the U.S. economy right now, and that's why we see a lot of our friends from overseas investing in treasury bonds. I think that, and so your question, Jackie, was about just how do we push back on some of the pieces that are incorrect or...
Right, well, when they say it adds to the deficit...
Excuse me, Jackie, can we get that mic back? Because this is all being taped and recorded, and
sorry about that.
Yeah, good. Thanks.
So the thread that can be connected to the deficit are those treasury bonds, because they are debt that's issued by our country. But so how do we push back on saying those treasury bonds were put there because you took the money?
Yeah, well, that's actually a piece of it, is recognizing where it came from. So Jackie Silly is correct that the Social Security Trust Fund, because it has been running a surplus, has been a favorite for borrowing from. And so one of the things that we need to do is to redirect that conversation and say, no more borrowing from the Social Security Trust Fund. That's not acceptable. We can also talk a little bit about some of the things that I'd referenced about bringing back the some of the ways for long-term financial solvency. And so I would suggest, it can be really challenging sometimes when someone takes that little thread and tries to make a sweater out of it. And so I would suggest that that we don't focus entirely on the sweater, and that you reframe the conversation and the debate to say, well, I'm not sure that that's entirely true. Let me tell you what I do know. Social Security Trust Fund has been raided in the past. We need to make sure that that doesn't happen again. And we need to pay back some of that money that we've taken to pay for these other things that we decided we could just take from the Social Security Fund. Let me tell you how to do that.
Other questions, comments? Yes, right there. And wait, if you could just wait till we get the mics. I've been chastised for not saying that.
Hi, my name's Haley Carsonson. I just had a quick question for you, Sarah, about the taxable wage cap. If you were to remove that for all of income, would that apply just to FICA taxes or all taxes?
It would just be FICA taxes. Thank you for that clarification.
We're over here, just a minute, and you've got right behind you, Zib, is a, or right in front of you. There you go.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm Zib Carell. Maybe this is a comment to share with Carol. I had the pleasure of participating at an annual event for the Community Loan Fund this week. And for people who know about the New Hampshire Community Loan Fund, they're something like a bank, except that we all are the donors to them. And their focus is on low-income people. And I'm not on their board or anything, but I do advocate what they are about. And what struck me at that event was they were featuring a particular child care facility that they were highlighting because they've made a loan to them. And this is in Winchester, down on the border, you know, below Keene. And what made this child care facility unique is that they have been able to establish second shift child care. And most of us know how unusual that is. Winchester is not a very wealthy community. It's probably the opposite of that. And so it was a pretty remarkable undertaking. And the loan fund sees that as an area where they can have an impact. In my conversations with other people at that event, what I was hearing was that we can't look to government to solve our problems in the next 10 years, particularly in New Hampshire. It's not going to happen. Structurally, we're just not there. And so you commented on the Seacoast coming up with perhaps a new model. And to me, as someone who looks at different kinds of solutions that can work to resolve many of our social issues, this was a new model. It was looking to a local banking system. The loan fund is something like a bank that invests in our community with a heavy focus on impacts that are low income as ways to resolve some of the issues that many of us deal with, not just the folks from the low income sector. So it's more of an observation than anything.
Thanks, Zib. Any comments on that, Carol?
The only thing I want to say is that we have a problem in spreading innovation. You know, so when you hear about these amazing good results, we don't have a good way of even sharing that information. So I love the fact that you said it, and I think that's one of the ways we could do is try to find as many of these, make them obvious to people, and help them learn how to adopt them in their local communities. So that was great, and I think the Seacoast group is great, and I bet there are other ones out there too that we can learn to at least share that information. So thanks.
Can I just add something, Cotton? We keep referring to child care as a low-income problem. It goes across incomes. Oh, yeah. You can be a physician working second or third shift, and there just is not a lot of quality child care at any price.
We have right there, just hold, yeah, just, she's got a mic for you there.
Thank you. My name is Phyllis Pietro. I'm a semi-retired professor at Johns Hopkins School of Public Health. My question, it's more of a comment, it's related to the Social Security issue. One hears a lot of people saying these days that 46% of the American people don't pay any income taxes at all. That's technically true if you're talking about filling out a 1044 form and paying what's called a federal income tax. But I think on Social Security, it's really important to emphasize that every single American who makes money, any kind of money at any point, is paying Social Security and Medicare at the rate of 7.65% today. So I think it's really important for us always to speak out and say, no, that's not true. Everybody who makes money pays into Social Security and Medicare. When I was 16 years old and my first job was a counselor at Camp Interlake and Camp Coniston here, I made $100 for the whole year. And they took out Social Security. At that point, it kind of annoyed me at that point. But I think that it's really important for women and everyone to emphasize that it is not true that 46% of the American workers, American people, do not pay income tax, because it just isn't true, and it's a Social Security argument I think we need to keep making.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
and-
And if I could, oh, I'm sorry, may I add
go
briefly
ahead,
to
Sarah,
that?
yeah.
That's an incredibly important point. And to add briefly to that about who pays into Social Security, one of the things that I did not mention is that undocumented immigrants do by and large pay into Social Security, but tend not to collect. I read a New York Times article not too long ago that in 2009, undocumented immigrants had paid $8 billion into the Social Security Trust Fund.
Thank you. And I think you had a... I do. You do, yes. Hold right back at. Thanks.
I just want to comment on the child care issue that my research has shown as a working mother that my child care providers provided a tremendous service for me to be able to be in the workforce, but they were very low paid. So when we talk about it being, almost 20% of your annual income, what those wage earners for being child care providers, they were not making really a living wage to support their own families. So I think that we do have to have access to quality child care, and certainly I think the third shift is an option that we need to look at. But I think just like teachers that are often female-oriented jobs, we're not paying these people enough money to support their own families. So while we want quality and we want it at a reasonable price, we're not taking into consideration, I don't think, the value that those people are providing us when they do provide quality child care or teachers and education for our children.
Yeah, and both Carol and Monica, I'd love your comments on that.
Well, it's only about $20,000 a year for child care workers in New Hampshire, which, of course, exactly what you say makes it that they couldn't even afford the child care that they're providing for other people. And so I think that's just an absolute critical issue.
And the other group of children that we haven't touched on around child care is the subsidy runs out at age 12. So if you're a working full-time mother and you have a 13-year-old, it becomes increasingly difficult. And we know that we do not want our 13 to 16-year-olds unattended in the afternoons because they make some pretty poor choices.
Could you make that till like maybe age 19?
Or 25. But we know that crime, pregnancies, all of those things tend to happen in those hours in the afternoon with teenagers, and primarily women are making the choice: do I cut back to part-time to keep my children safe, or do I stay working so I have benefits and I can afford to pay my rent? I mean, these are decisions in a very affluent country we shouldn't have people weighing out.
I think over here. And then I do know there's one there. I'll get you next, yeah.
My name is Julie Machin, and first of all, an observation and then a question as to how to deal with this. It's been my experience to hear that the very people who are attacking the funding for Planned Parenthood, for other family planning organizations, once those children are born, are the same ones who do not want to see money given to child care or some of the other needs that the children and the families are requesting and requiring. So my question is how, I think I'm speaking to the choir here, so how do we get that question asked and answered?
Who wants to grab that one?
I think we go back to Annie. For one, at one level, you have to vote in people who are willing to take on those sorts of issues. I think you have to get the real facts out there, too. I think some of the things that people have said up here are just so much clearer than you ever hear. I think those are two big, powerful things. Plus, you also have a lot of power in your own workplace. Right. So people who are employed and have good positions and get into positions of authority, you can really use your platform. And in fact, we need to support the women who do use their platforms to support those kinds of policies.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I mean, I think how we vote has such a huge impact. And I think, for women to advocate in the workplace, I think is also critical. We're on this 19th century model with our education systems and with our workplaces. I mean, let's be honest, we're all hooked in 24 hours a day. So, say you have that teenager who's coming home, why not have the flexibility to leave your job, go home, through dinner time, and then go back to work. I mean, a lot of us log back onto our computer after dinner anyway. So why not really start thinking out of the box of what needs to get done at work, and when can it get done? Again, we just need to start, we keep thinking we have these little walls around us, and this is how we have to keep doing things. And again, there are people looking at this around the country. I was at a great conference last week, so I'm a little charged up, but not every place is doing it.
And I think, there's real power in women's voting. And unfortunately, women on their own, which is women who are never married, divorced women, and widowed women, are the largest growing non-voting demographic in the country. That's a shame. We need to do something about that, because when women vote, everyone wins.
Thanks. And right there, you've had your hand up, and then I'll get to you in a second.
Hi, I'm Kristen Smith. I'm a research professor at the Carsey Institute at University of New Hampshire. I wanted to add one more thing to the wonderful things you all have been talking about with the child care and jobs and Social Security is paid sick days and paid maternity leave. A lot of the choices that women are making are based on economics, as one of you said, but paid sick days is such an important thing for people to be able to not make the choice between leaving kids home sick and going into work and getting fired if they don't go in. A lot of the choices that are being made in terms of going back to work and what kind of child care you can get for your kids are based on how much time you have with your child before you go back to work. So I just wanted to add that to one of the things that we're discussing. There's legislation that is pending that's been in Congress time and time again that never gets even to the floor for a vote often. So I would like to hear what you all have to say about that.
Well, and I think, again, election is important, and we actually made a choice not in the state of New Hampshire last year to push for paid sick time for part-time workers. The year before, there had been some bills pending. But that's a decision employers can make. And I think really educating employers on the benefits, it costs a lot to train an employee now. It isn't, again, we're in that 19th century model where we're viewing the lower rungs as sort of disposable assets. It's very expensive to train people. Even a waitress now needs to know technology because it's all computerized. So when you start making the case to employers from an economic point, why does it make sense? And again, the research is showing that women who leave the workforce are doing it because there's not enough flexibility and that draw around families. Women are as ambitious as men now, and that gap has closed. And actually, part of it is men have dropped down as not wanting additional work responsibility, and the women have come up. So it's it's even now of wanting responsibility at work and wanting to advance in a career. But again, you've got to be able to come in and out. Sometimes you may need to be part-time without losing your retirement, your health insurance, and your paid sick time.
Carol?
One really important issue on this, too, is pursuing advanced degrees. A lot of women go to graduate school but drop out of graduate school because they want to have children. And so we need to get those child care, those maternity leave policies covering people during their period of training. Dartmouth really was one of the first places that gave maternity leave to graduate students, but that is completely uncommon, as all of you in higher ed know. And so that's just another example that reinforces you have to go at it from leave and all the way through to child care for development.
We'll do one more question, and then, have you had your hand up forever?
Oh.
Okay, we'll do two more questions. We'll do two more questions, but this gal first, and then we'll hear closing comments from each of our panelists.
Hi, I'm Xantha Hilton, and this is a question for Sarah. About the solvency, you said that Social Security is only solvent until 2041, but then you also said that the current working generation is paying for the beneficiaries of Social Security. So is it possible as the millennial generation and the college students now, as they go out into the workforce and they pay into Social Security will be solvent for longer?
It's an excellent question. Most likely not. Right now, because we're in a jobs crisis, unfortunately, those of you who are in college or looking to graduate, you have a little bit more challenging time finding a job. And until we solve the jobs crisis so that that individuals who are graduating from college now and in the next couple of years do have the opportunity for full employment, I don't see that happening.
Thank you. And in the very back, you are like the best waiver of that program.
I thought it was an auction.
Hi, my name is Sally Rudder. I've had an aha moment back here that I'm all charged up about. It's the concept that men are beginning to get anxious and stressed out. Is that being measured and studied? Is there research on that? How can I know more about that?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I have it with me. So the Work Family Institute out of New York, Ellen Galinsky, who we're hoping to bring here for the Work Family Conference in June. That's my little commercial. She's done a lot of work, and again, it's a generational shift. So it really is those sort of 35 and unders who really want to have time with their families. We're seeing that there's a cost for children who have no one home. And so the men are starting to feel uncomfortable. And as I said, their ambition and wanting to take more job responsibility is dropping as the women's come up. So it is, as that meets, I think we will start to see changes.
Right, and we'll be having a break shortly, so you can grab Monica for those studies. So in 30 seconds, what's the main point you'd like the audience to come away with? And Sarah, can we?
For our particular issue?
Yeah, for your issue, just briefly.
Absolutely. There are ways that we can strengthen our Social Security system so that it is around for generations to come. And we need to open our ears and open our eyes and be open to those opportunities. And they don't involve cutting benefits or privatizing the system. What they do involve is addressing our jobs crisis and addressing the long-term funding sources.
Great, thank you. And I believe that there is a handout from Sarah that will be available to everyone. Monica?
Sure. I think that it's really critical that work needs to work for people. I wrote a quote down, which I've now found from Valerie Jarrett at the White House yesterday, that says, "Women's issues are America's issues." And I think we really have to take a holistic approach when we look at work, school. These systems are all interconnected, and change is hard and it's slow, but I think we are making headway.
Great. And Carol?
I'll just make two big comments about childcare. Obviously, it's critical. I just think there are two ways to go about it. We have to all vote, and I think we all have to act locally. Every single person that works has some power in the workplace, probably a lot more power than you know, to influence those policies, and we need to take that influence and use it.
Thank you to our panelists. You can tell by looking around the room and by listening to some of the, not only questions, but the statements, that in addition to our panelists during the day, you have some absolutely amazing women in this room that we can all learn from and talk to. So it's a pretty exciting day. What we're going to do now is take a break, and I believe that break is sponsored by Ledyard, and we'll come back together. Kimberly, 10? When do you want us back? Deb? 10. Thank you. Okay. Have a nice break, get some networking, and enjoy all the great food and coffee.